Like I said, are you doing it? Right? We have to do it. We have to evaluate. If we're not evaluating people, we are not helping them get better, right? If you think of a parent who is not having any sort of oversight over their children are going to do whatever. They're going to run wild. I know if there's no evaluation at my house will be insane. Welcome to the Train to Serve YouTube channel, where we are trying to create a toolkit of resources to help you establish a culture of servant leadership in your church or ministry. So I encourage you to take a minute to look down below and get the free discipleship outline that we're offering to you. All you need to do is share your email with us, and if you don't unsubscribe, you'll be able to get access to a weekly newsletter with resources and materials that you can use to continue to grow and to use in your personal ministry. So now to the video. Hi, and welcome to our sixth video on our discipleship outline. And today we're going to talk about evaluation. So I think when it comes to discipleship, evaluation is one of the most overlooked parts of discipleship that should be taking place. And I say that because, number one, what tends to happen is there is no evaluation, right? We just kind of do the eye test and are like, well, they seem like they're doing well. They seem like they're growing, or this seems like a place of ministry that they'll work in. Even if there's some things like those will get figured out, right? So that's the one thing that happens, and sometimes we forget about it. Or number two, we have a poor process of evaluation, right? We don't really have the tools or the system in place to evaluate people properly and understand if where they are serving or how they are growing is that process is going well, right? I think oftentimes we tend to, because especially if you have a smaller ministry, it's very easy to plug someone in, and if it doesn't work the first time, or if it works great the first time, to just assume, well, everything's good, now we can just forget all of this, right? Instead of looking at it as a process of evaluation and growth and, determining whether this person is fit for this specific type of ministry that you're trying to get them in. And so I think there are a couple main things here that we really need to consider when it comes to the evaluation part of discipling. And the first question is, like I said, are you doing it? Right? We have to do it. We have to evaluate. If we're not evaluating people, we are not helping them get better, right? If you think of a parent who is not having any sort of oversight over their children are going to do whatever. They're going to run wild. I know if there's no evaluation at my house will be insane. And so it's the same way in ministry and in discipleship. We need to evaluate people and give it the time to really reflect on how those people are doing, how they're growing, how are they serving. Because they're likely not going to get better unless you are able to give them some feedback, you're able to help them, point them in the right direction, or even just to encourage them. If they're doing great, awesome. But part of evaluation is encouraging them if they're doing great. And so then they're galvanized and their confidence is built up. And that's incredibly important too. So you got to do it. That's the first thing. You got to do it. And the second, like I said, you have to have a good system for it, right? It can't just be some random eye test. No, come up with some sort of system for evaluating how people are doing, right? Whether it's just a little rubric, or even just okay, these are the three main things, characteristics, or strengths I need to see in people who are helping out in kids ministry or in missions, or as a deacon. These are three things, how are they doing, and being honest about how they're doing in those things, right? Even something. We have to have some sort of system for it. Otherwise, it's going to feel very random. It's not going to be helpful to people. From one person to the next, you're going to give wildly differing amounts of feedback. And I don't think that's good. I think it's good to have some sort of system or process for how you're evaluating people and checking in with them. Another incredibly important part of evaluation is balancing the willingness to allow someone to continue serving in an area of ministry where maybe they didn't do the best job or where there's a lot of growth needed, versus making the difficult decision to just admit that that person is not cut out for that specific area of ministry, right? I think there's a fine line that we have to walk, because the truth is that people who are doing something for the first time are usually not good at that thing, unless you've asked them to do something incredibly simple, right? That you absolutely know that they're going to nail. But that's not what we talked about in our last video, right? Part of being able to entrust people with responsibility is you have to entrust them with a little more than you think they're capable of to find out if they can serve to greater extents or in more areas or with greater oversight over more people. And so I think you need to be willing to say, okay, this person, maybe they weren't the best fit, but I think that they could grow in a couple small areas, right? I think if they had these small areas that they worked on, or these things that they did a little bit better in practice or trained, that they would be able to come in a month from now and they would be significantly better just by changing a few of those things, right? Determining that is important. But also, I think oftentimes in small ministries, what we're afraid of is if we don't find someone to fill this gap, like this whole thing falls apart. And the truth is, in small ministry, right, in smaller ministries, that's always the case, right? We have to acknowledge that sometimes when, like Lewis leaves the church and he was the main one upholding this entire wing of ministry, and there wasn't anybody there to take his place, you might not be able to continue to do that ministry, right? But I think oftentimes what we do out of desperation is like, oh, we got to throw somebody in there. We got to fill that because we need to keep that program going. Well, if that person is completely in over their head in taking Lewis's position, you are going to create a really bad scenario for your church and for that individual. Who's going to feel like you threw them in. Eventually, they're going to feel like you threw them in the deep end and they couldn't measure up. Or they're going to start thinking really terrible things about themselves and their abilities because you asked them to do too much. And that's on you. And so as a leader in ministry, it's important to be able to acknowledge if someone doesn't fit for a specific area of ministry, and to live with the tension of, maybe we can't do that anymore, or maybe we can't do it in the same way that we could anymore. But I'll tell you what is far more damaging is putting someone in a position that is they're way in over their heads, and you can't maintain it, and everybody gets left with bad feelings all around once you have the rubble of the destruction that takes place in realizing that thing can't sustain itself when Lewis left. And so that is where I leave you, is this reality that when we're evaluating people, when we're looking at people and seeing how they're doing, we're trying to figure out if they're in the right area of ministry or not. We need to do evaluation, right? We need to have a process. We need to be willing to admit whether it's working or not. And in doing so, we need to understand whether this person that we're discipling, did it not work because of small steps that they need to grow in, just different, like slight pivots and how they're serving in that specific ministry? Or is this a big character, personality issue that needs to be addressed in order for this person to continue to grow. And because if it's a big character issue, right, then we need to go back to the second part of our discipleship outline and talk about, health and emotion, emotional health, and because those are things that need to be talked through, that need to be processed, right? And oftentimes we don't find out those character issues until we've put them, entrusted them with responsibility, and then we've evaluated how they've done with that. So hopefully talking about evaluation has been helpful to you. Hopefully it gives you a slightly better picture of why it's so important, right? Please remember to evaluate. That's something we have to do. We often overlook it. But secondly, just as we continue to disciple people and grow them, to recognize that we can't just not have a plan, right? We need to have a plan and purpose in what we're doing and building towards the things that God has for these people that we're discipling. Discipleship is such a crucial part of who we are and what we do as children of God. And so we don't want to lose sight of that, and we want to disciple people to the greatest effectiveness as possible. And so if this was helpful to you, I encourage you to like and subscribe below if you haven't done that already. And if you still haven't gotten the discipleship outline, what are you doing? Just go ahead and send us your email so that we can get that to your inbox, and you can receive the discipleship outline for free and start to get weekly newsletter from us on different resources to help you, to train and to equip you in doing the ministry that God has called you to. So we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.